The hyperscales have understood that for them to grow faster in the APAC, at least in the region, India becomes a very strategic location where infrastructure is available. And they're looking at technology-driven assets. I'm very pleased to share that today CapitaLand is the first player in the country to implement liquid cooling in one of their assets. So when a technology-driven infrastructure is available at the right location, at the right capacity, and with the speed of execution, that's what attracts investors.
Hello and welcome to Cool Vector. I'm David Snow, your host. And today we're joined by Surajit Chatterjee. He's a managing director for CapitaLand in India. And CapitaLand is a major investor around the world. In India, it is just getting going with a very important data center investment program. CapitaLand, under Surajit's leadership, has 4 data center projects in development. So Surajit, thanks for joining Cool Vector. Really great to see you, and I'm looking forward to delving into your program. Let's kind of start maybe at a 1,000-foot level, Surajit. What should investors understand about the demand for digital services in India?
I think today India is in the cusp of a digital evolution, I must say. Pre-COVID, the entire data center landscape and the capacity was roughly hovering around 350 megawatts. And today, as we speak, we've crossed the 1.2 gigawatt and likely to hit about 1.5 gigawatt by 2026. Where is the demand coming from? It is typically from the digitization wave India is going through. And the demand is largely led by the hyperscalers. They drive up roughly about 60 to 70% of the capacity in India. And the balance 20 to 30% is hovering around large enterprises, which is specifically vertical driven, like the banking and the financial fraternity, the e-commerce and the ITs. This new asset class is growing at a CAGR of more than 25 to 30% in India. The last 3 to 4 years, the investment size has almost touched 4.2 billion USD. And it's roughly to attract another 2 to 3 billion in the next 2 to 3 years.
Let's pretend you're in a room full of institutional investors. They are all interested in the digital infrastructure opportunity. What is the case that you make to them that they should consider India as a place for their investment capital long term?
The biggest driving point is that today, if you look at the surrounding APAC, countries like Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, China, they have reached a certain level of penetration where the data center is concerned. Today, we are 1/10 of the US in terms of data center penetration. I think the potential is huge. The government has acknowledged to help this infrastructure to reach to a scale. Today, governments are talking of data center parks and data center hubs where gigawatts of capacities are being planned. The hyperscales have understood that for them to grow faster in the APAC, at least in the region, India becomes a very strategic location where infrastructure is available. And they're looking at technology-driven assets. I'm very pleased to share that today CapitaLand is the first player in the country to implement liquid cooling in one of their assets. So when a technology-driven infrastructure is available at the right location, at the right capacity, and with the speed of execution, that's what attracts investors. They look that the demand is being there. They look that the build quality is there. They look that the offtake is happened within the committed time period, and it is able to meet the required committed returns from the portfolio. So that itself is becoming a very, very interesting and a very strategic proposition for the investment community to come to India. And that's the reason we see today players like CapitaLand, Brookfield, Blackstone, they all now have a data center platform. When they see India, they see that it is poised for growth for next 5 to 10 years very clearly.
Right now, what questions are you getting from investors about the India opportunity, especially, non-Indian investors? What do they want to know before they put their capital to work?
They want to reassure themselves on 2 things. One, will the demand continue to grow the way it is growing for the next 3 to 5 years? And the second question is that, will the power situation be available as capacities keeps growing? To the first question, I think the demand is clearly seen for the next 3 to 5 years. The reason is the hyperscalers are creating their own infrastructure capacity roadmap. If an operator is putting $1 into the floor, the hyperscalers put $4 in terms of their network and equipment. So they're looking at long term. They're also very concerned that an operator has the financial stability to hold the asset for the next 10 to 15 years. because they know they want to scale up the capacity. They also want operators to give them larger land parcels with larger powers so that they are able to scale within the period of time. And I'm happy to share that the Indian government has understood that power is key to the data center growth. Hence, new substations are coming in the corridors. They're coming with higher capacities of power directly from the grid. The renewable policy and the framework is getting implemented. So I think these two are giving comfort to the investors that if they look at India, they look that the story is definitely very, very clear and visible for the next 8 to 10 years. I think that gives them confidence that whatever is being told and said to them is actually going to be true.
How would you describe India's penetration rate of digital infrastructure versus its population if you compare India against more developed nations?
I think with a huge population, the internet penetration is roughly about hovering around 50-55% only. So I think with half the population still to penetrate, I think it brings immense amount of opportunity and growth prospects for India. Having said that, I think India is clearly poising for the next trajectory of growth, whether on the digital side, whether on the payment gateway side, whether on the cloud side, and whether now on the AI and the ML, which is still to hit India. Hence, it becomes a very, very meaningful proposition for investors and for the customers to scale up capacities and possibly create an ecosystem for them for the next 5 to 7 years as they pave their growth into it.
You mentioned land availability and power. Obviously, it's important, and it involves coordination with various Indian government entities, whether at the national level or at the state level. Is there a welcome mat being rolled out for digital infrastructure investors? How complex are the regulations to navigate?
With the kind of demand which was foreseen, the central government took it much early as a strategic step, and they declared this asset class and infrastructure status in the year 2022, which enabled it to de-align itself from the IT policy of the country. Hence, what happened was every state rolled out their state policies, giving various kinds of investments, opportunities, rebates, discounts to the investors like us who will come and build up this capacity, which also did one more important thing. It helped a lot of licensing work easy. So it's sort of a one window environment which was created by every state where they identified right land corridors. So the industrial zones were identified through this policy. It became a lot of easier for new players like CapitaLand to come in to identify those areas, do the initial due diligence, and able to move fast track in terms of approvals, power feasibility, techno infrastructure, so on and so forth. Prior to COVID, it used to take a lot of amount of time by the operators or investors to find out and locate what kind of right land parcels they should be in. With this policy framework, it became much easier. Hence, they could fast track their project execution, they could fast track their design work, they could fast track their eventual revenue realization.
So, are you mostly targeting land that is near or in industrial areas, largely because of the power infrastructure that's already there?
Yes, largely across India, the four core markets where CapitaLand is also present, which is Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. CapitaLand has a large, diverse portfolio in India, which includes office, which includes warehousing, which includes renewables, and now data centers, which gives CapitaLand a little bit of edge than competitor, where they already understand the ground realities, they understand the approval mechanism process. And with the policy support which the data center industry is now being given, it becomes much easier for us to fast track our identification and execution for a new project.
You mentioned renewable energy. What is the state of the Indian renewable energy market? If you start to build a data center in a certain area, what percentage of that power mix can be renewable right at the starting point?
At this moment, government is still not defining a certain percentage, but what the internal news says that roughly about 30 to 35% of your life capacity has to be green. The kind of supply India is likely to see in the next 2 to 3 years. Investors like us also look at renewable as sort of a business line. So data center as a huge power guzzler caters to our other asset classes. Our typical approach right now would be looking at dedicated captives to build our own capacities. We've already launched a 25 megawatt solar power plant in Chennai. And we intend to build these kind of capacities not only to cater to our data center asset class, but overall to the entire business portfolio Capital is having. Hyperscalers have become very, very clear in terms of a mandate coming from them in terms of a certain percentage to be green. Operators like us have to have a clear sustainability goal and a mandate for years to come.
Is the CapitaLand strategy for now based very much on partnering with hyperscalers? Are you therefore focusing on larger data center campuses? And do you think in the Indian market there is room for multiple smaller data centers in strategic locations?
Right now, CapitaLand strategy is very clear. We are focusing on large capacities, and our strength from our product offering is what we call build to suit, where we offer quite flexible technology innovation and design capability to our potential hyperscale customers. Hence, we have adopted in India a hybrid strategy, which means that about 70% of our revenue are targeted towards hyperscalers, and roughly about 30% of our revenues are focused on the large enterprises. CapitaLand doesn't operate in the mid or the retail segment. The reason is that when we say large enterprises, we are catering to the large financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, e-commerce, large IT organizations, where it's being seen that they have also ramped up their capacities in the last 1 to 2 years because of the digital drive. When we go into a micro market, we study that micro market well in terms of the customer base, and we build the product suiting to that requirement, keeping a mix of a 70-30 kind of an approach.
Can you give us a brief overview of the developments that are already underway in India that are backed by CapitaLand? We mentioned that there are 4 developments, but just give us the highlights of those projects, please.
We're building in 4 major corridors of India, which is Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. The combined gross load capacity between the 4 is roughly around 245 megawatts, with an IT load of roughly about 155 to 157 megawatts of IT load. Right now, it's done in phases. Mumbai being the first largest capacity, which we are building roughly about 110 megawatts of capacity, is going live by mid of 2025, followed by Hyderabad, which will see its completion by end of 2025. Chennai and Bangalore are under construction phase. Chennai will go first live by 2026, followed by Bangalore. So as we build in phases, the entire plan is to roll out the capacities to the prospective customers so that they can come in early, they can create the opportunities. Incidentally, Mumbai and Chennai are the top 2 markets of the country, largely because of their cable landing presence, which is there. Hence, it becomes a very, very suitable proposition for the hyperscale community to come and invest.
Can you please give us an overview of the financing mix for these projects? Clearly, a lot of equity is coming from the CapitaLand funds. Was there a co-investment from some of your investors? Is there project finance? Are there loans?
It's on a multi-bucket strategy. We have, for every country, the REIT model being listed in Singapore. The REIT vehicle for India is CapitaLand India Trust, which owns 100% of these assets. So that pool is largely coming from the balance sheet. However, now as we pave our next phase of growth in India, we will be wanting to build another 250 to 300 megawatts of next phase of growth in core markets like Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai, and Kolkata. There, the strategy would be to go and sell a stake to a private LP so that it helps us to have a right amount of mix from a capital pool perspective to augment and fuel the growth which we are encompassing in the next 2 to 3 years. By the year 2028, CapitaLand India Data Centre wishes to have a portfolio size of 500 megawatts of IT load. And to fuel that growth, there will be a mix of capital from the fund, from the balance sheet, as well as from project financing.
Oh, interesting. So there will be opportunities for large institutional investors that partner with CapitaLand to have a direct stake in some of these data center projects.
Absolutely.
I take it that these large investors, they view these as stable long-term infrastructure investments that they can have in their portfolio?
Yes, they're viewing like that only. And they look at long-term because today, if you look at the hyperscale community contract timelines, they're also very large. They typically talk of 10 to 15 years of fixed contract. So hence, the investor also looks at these long-term contracts when they built into the financial model in terms of an equity stake.
You've already mentioned this, but can you talk about the advantages that CapitaLand has because you also have power investments and real estate investments in India, and how that knowledge can help to support your data center investment activity?
That helps, that indeed helps us, because one, when we identify the right location, the land acquisition time reduces, because we are very much aware about the entire approval process in terms of the application, in terms of licensing, in terms of various government authorities, including the power feasibility, the substation study, the augmentation, so on and so forth. In terms of construction, we have all the defined processes and skills available within in-house. So when we build a core and shell, it is done quite faster, whether it is on a concrete structure or on a steel structure. So with the real estate experience of CapitaLand, which cuts across various asset classes like office, logistics, data centers, the combined group effort helps to reduce the timeline. Today in India, delivery and timely execution has become a key to cater to your large hyperscale community. And that's where I feel a CapitaLand has an edge. In fact, two of our projects are within our IT parks, and they're also the core corridors for that local micro market. The land is already owned by us. The power is partially available. The entire ecosystem is of IT fraternity, which tomorrow are going to be the potential clients for us in the data centers, because it is the same vicinity. So these strategic advantages giving us a little bit of edge over competition in meeting the customer requirements.
Final question. There is a phenomenon often called the leapfrog effect, where an emerging economy is able to start at a more advanced starting point in some form of development. And I think a classic example of that is cell phones. India has an opportunity to expand its cell phone usage without first investing in an extensive landline infrastructure like some of the more developed nations. To what extent is that leapfrog effect at work in the data center space in India? Are there opportunities to start at a more advanced technological level with these data centers and bypass some of the older, more legacy infrastructure challenges that the more developed countries have had to go through?
I think India is still fueling the growth of the cloud requirements, while AI and ML is still yet to come in the full force. But the new age facilities, even with what we are also designing, are all AI-enabled infrastructures, where the power will look very different, the cooling mechanism will look very different, the rack densities at the floor level will look very different.
Excellent. Well, Surajit, is there any topic related to your investment objectives in India that I've neglected to ask you about? Is there a point you wanted to make that we didn't get around to?
Today we have 27 data centers with an 800 megawatts of live capacity present in countries like Europe, China, Singapore, and India, and now entering Japan. We identified our core markets well. We identified our future capacities well. We put enough and more focus on design and build quality so that we are able to have meaningful transactions. With this momentum, I will not be very surprised by 2028 if India even crosses the 2 gigawatt mark, and that makes it very special.
Excellent. Well, Surajit Chatterjee, Managing Director at CapitaLand Investment for data centers in India. Thank you so much for joining Cool Vector today. I hope we can have you back on a future program to help us understand what's going on in the world of data centers and digital infrastructure.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Have a good day. Thank you.